So today we're reviewing
Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is the next MCU movie. It is currently 1:20 in the morning. I just saw this movie, and what are your initial thoughts of this movie?
I mean, my initial thoughts are obviously terrible situation there with Chadwick Boseman. Great actor, was the absolute best part of the last Black Panther, and I enjoyed the movie from every scene that he was in it and the performance he gave in that storyline. But this movie, walking out of the theater, it definitely was missing Chadwick Boseman, and it was very long. And I'll get my thoughts here in a second, but I'd say overall, I walked out of the theater feeling very, very with like mixed emotions. There's some things that I did like about it, but there's a lot of things that really I think we both agreed on was not necessarily our favorite aspects of the movie.
Yeah, first and foremost, obviously, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. He was a great actor, and any criticisms I have of this movie obviously has nothing to do with him as a person or anything. This is criticisms of this movie, and my initial thoughts were I was disappointed for sure. This movie missed on a lot of points. I mean, there's things to like, but I just was really disappointed with a lot of stuff in this movie. We're going to get into it with our specific. But what are your main positives with the film?
My main positives, once again, going back to Chadwick Boseman, there were some cool references to him. There was a beginning sequence, not really sequence, but the beginning title card. The stuff that involved Chadwick Boseman and actually using him was definitely, I connected with that. I enjoyed that stuff. And I'd also say some of the fight sequences, there were some cool fight sequences, some cool special effects. That's when they were working, they did work. Some really cool, some pretty cool fight scenes. And I would say the villain aspect, there were definitely some cool shots that I appreciated.
Yeah.
Some of the music worked, some of the scenery worked as well. But overall, though, I'd say those are my biggest good takeaways from the movie.
Yeah, I'd say the main positives for sure is the action scenes. There are some really good ones. There's some good ones, and then some that had potential, but then didn't really. If the story around it would have been better, maybe they would have worked.
True.
There's some really good sound effects, cool characters. The villain, like you said, was interesting, and there's a lot of interesting things in this movie that the two different sides fighting each other, and you don't really know who's good and bad. And that's kind of a positive and a negative.
Yeah.
But I also think there was some good music for parts, and then it was unexpected for parts as well. I think that's the main positives. Why don't we get into our negatives with the film?
Negatives of the film.
It's a lot. Most of mine are negatives.
Negatives of the film, I have to say, is just some of the storyline aspects and, in my opinion, the lack of respect for Chadwick Boseman and the character of Black Panther. The way that they justify what goes on, I'm not getting into spoilers there. I didn't necessarily like the way that they went with that. Obviously, I will admit the movie
My
had
respect for Black Panther.
Right, the T'Challa, and how that storyline was kind of wrapped up. Now, I will give the movie some credit, or not credit, but it was a really hard situation that they were thrown into. They were not expecting that. So, either way they went, there would have been probably some negatives from that. So, it was kind of a lose-lose situation with how they were supposed to handle this. But having said that, the decision to make the movie almost 3 hours long is a very bad decision. And we were struggling to get through certain scenes in the movie. I was getting very tired at points. Now, when the action was happening, I was intrigued and liking some of the stuff that was on screen. But once again,
Get your butt out.
I would say that something that a lot of movies in here recently have kind of come across with these Marvel movies and movies in general is just the aspect of unlikable characters that are unconnectable. When there's unlikable characters, not only do I not care for those characters, but it makes scenes drag. And when you have multiple characters I don't care about on screen, I am very checked out. And there's certain characters, I'm not saying this is one of the worst movies with characters that I can't stand, but there's some that you can't get behind. And then when things happen later on, you're just kind of rolling your eyes, really, that just happened. And some of the special effects did not work at certain points. Because some of the scenes were just getting crazy.
Expect to be better than...
Yeah, I think it's because there was just so much going on at one point where, like you said, there was some potential to have some really cool scenes and cool aspects. And then there's obviously certain things that I can't really talk about now that were definitely negatives that just really came out of nowhere. It's like, really, like, why have that in there? When you make everyone able to fight a threat, there's no tension at all. Because that's the thing is, like, when there's like a Thanos level threat or like the main threat, you know no one stands a chance against that except your main lead or your main group. But when everyone is able to just be a superhero, fly around, be Iron Man, it's just really like there's too much as well. And again, a lot of my negatives are hard to speak on without spoiling. But there's just that's the worst offense had to be the draggingness and the runtime of this movie.
Yeah, my negatives include a lot of this. It was too long. There were a lot of scenes where I was just thinking, okay, something needs to happen here. I mean, really slow at parts that just I am almost going 24 hours without sleep. So maybe that's why I'm so tired during this movie. But I almost fell asleep like 4 times, and there were scenes that almost got me. Okay, this is something here. This is cool, but then it just didn't really do much. I don't know. There's some cool scenes, but it's on no ground. If it was building up to some cool thing, having the two sides, the Wakandans and the Namor's guys, it was interesting. But then again, like you said, there's characters in here that just ruin it. And there's a certain character in this movie that did not need to be in it. Totally ruined it. And then was totally not in it for any reason. And then, yeah, the powers of our main characters kind of get degraded when everyone has these freaking superpowers. And, yeah, it was slow. There was a lot of boring parts. It felt really freaking long, which is not a good sign. And there's other negatives I'm not thinking about right now. Obviously, there's a bunch of terrible lines. But why don't we just go into our final thoughts and score and try to keep this under 2?
Yeah, final thoughts and score. I mean, obviously, like I said, this movie was put in a hard position where it was going to be very hard to come out with a great score, in my opinion, with just the terrible situation with the actor, the main lead of this movie, and Chadwick Boseman. But I'd have to say, walking out of the theater, it's definitely above average. It's not below average as far as, on my scale at least. Like with the special effects and with certain fight scenes, like it's definitely not like a awful movie, but it's definitely not one that I would go back to see in theaters.
That's for sure.
And I have to say, I mean, I'm struggling with the score right now. Like, my score rating is a little bit different than Kenny's, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. I was thinking about 6.5, but I mean, I can't. I have to be honest with what I think. And like I said, a 6 is probably where I'm at right now. Like I said, it's a little bit above average, but the negatives really weigh it down to not letting me put it to a 6.5 or a 7. So I'm gonna give Black Panther: Wakanda Forever a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, it's crazy. I did not know you were going to score it, but I was going to say 6 as well, because this movie is just it's too slow. I mean, there's so many parts where there's nothing happening on screen, and it's just I'm thinking, let's get into this. Let's do something here. Like, nothing's happening, and it was just really boring for a lot of this movie. And there's interesting things, like I said. There's the villains were interesting, but then again, the most interesting one, that Atuma guy, I have a freaking video game of him. He was barely flipping in it. He had a couple cool scenes, but he has like no screen time.
Yeah, freaking
Namor. He had cool potential, and then Namor has some cool scenes, but there's scenes where the good guys are killing innocent people, and it makes no sense. But yeah, I'd say 6 out of 10, because there's some positives. There's some fight scenes that were okay, but definitely not going to see it again. I mean, would not recommend this.
I don't think so. I'd rather go see.
Unfortunately, would not recommend.
I'd rather go see Hawkman knock marbles down in Black Adam.
I know. I do think I enjoyed Black Adam far more than this. But once again, just before Jake wraps this up, rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman.
You're right.
And he was one of my favorite parts of the original Black Panther.
For sure.
And
anyways, guys, thanks for watching our non-spoiler review of Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Let us know in the comments what you thought of this movie, and we'll obviously talk about more in the spoilers discussion. So yeah, we'll see you guys then. Have a great weekend and stay safe. And have a great Thanksgiving. We don't see you after that or before that.
All right,
so thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.